Hello, friends. It's the same old signature tune. Introduces the programme with a difference today. As it's nearing the end of the old year, I thought I'd invite some old friends to the studio party. And as you've already heard, there's Len Lowe, best straight man in the business, known as the Welmer Boy, because all the comic fees used to begin with, Welmer Boy! And then there's Alfie Pearson, the famous brother of Bob and Alf Pearson. And like me, he can wander back a few years in show business. And of the two ladies here, there's Joan Savage, often featured in our regular Soapbox programme. She's covered quite a lot in show business, from a zany double act with Ken Morris to point numbers and classical songs with symphony orchestras. The other lady is Doris Hare, the actress who during the war kept the country laughing, especially the sailors at sea, with the hit programme Shipmates Ashore. And to keep us all tuned in, we've got the supreme musician of Pianorama fame. Well, we hadn't got room for his orchestra, but we do welcome Harold Rich.
When do we eat?
When do you eat? Well, the buffet's there. Help yourselves. Come on, consider yourself at home. I'm ever so pleased to see you all. I really am. What was this about you and Noel Coward?
Oh, darling, well, I was in a show of his, Words of Music, and I said to him one day, I said, you know, Noel, the thing I'd love to be in, we have the theatrical garden party, remember that? When all the stars came, and there was a wonderful thing called the Celebrity Tent, where everybody, you know, Sybil Thorndike did a dance, it was wonderful. And I said, I would love to be in that. He said, all right, my darling. The next time we go, you should be in it. And I'm going to write something frightfully funny. And I said, oh, how wonderful. So the day came, we went to the tent. We were all there. Oh, the names, darling. Gertie Lawrence, Ivy St. Helier, me, Noel, and my first experience of a real big, shining, gorgeous piece of work called Robert Montgomery. Oh, wonderful. Yeah. And I said to him, no, what have you done? And he said, oh, my God, I've forgotten to write it. And he disappeared for about 20 minutes around the back somewhere. And then he came back and he handed us all a bit of paper. He said, that's yours, that's yours, that's yours, that's yours. And do you know what it was? No. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. She's a bit of an ugly duckling, you can honestly confess. And the width of her seat would surely defeat her chances of success. She's a big girl to give the wretched girl her due, but don't you think a bust to develop for a years? I repeat, Mrs. Worthington, sweet Mrs. Worthington, is not a good idea. For her to hope, dear Mrs. Worthington, it's on the face of it absurd. Her personality is not in reality inviting enough, exciting enough for this particular sphere. Don't put your daughter on the stage, Mrs. Worthington. Don't put your daughter on the stage. Though they said at the School of Acting she was lovely and peer gynt, I'm afraid on the whole, an ingenue role might emphasize her squint. She's got nice teeth to give the wretched girl her due, but don't you think a bust is to develop for her years? I repeat, Mrs. Worthington, sweet Mrs. Worthington, don't put your daughter on the stage.
Lovely.
Oh, you were so wonderful.
I can see Noel standing there.
Oh, dear.
Len, would I be right in guessing? I'm going to guess now. I should think Sid Field was your favourite.
Oh, yes. Very funny man.
Oh, right.
Yes, a real funny man.
You know, so many secrets, but he had that great injured dignity. Everything was his dignity was injured. I mean, when somebody used long words and he'd look so hurt that he didn't understand. Well, you can't expect everybody to know that, you know. He's so hurt. It was like a child.
I remember him with the organ when he turned around and clapped at his feet every time, and he walked forward and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to play you a piece from Shostakovich. Whittaker, I said it. It's so childish, but so lovely.
Amazed at his own talent, being able to say it, you know.
Hello, so walking against the wind when his hat was up. Alfie, who's your favourite?
Well, I don't know whose the favourite is, but, you know, in our early days, we worked with a lot of the big stars.
Yeah.
Harry Lauder, George Robey, Gracie, of course. But, you know, to see those perform, there was we used to watch on the side every performance.
When I was a kid.
Yeah.
And you know the wonderful drunk, what was his name? Jimmy James. Yes. I mean, I used to watch when I was doing variety, and I used to go on the side of the stage, watch him every night. He would start on Monday with no act at all. And gradually, with a cigarette and by about Thursday, he'd have us all this in hysterics, and me in hysterics. And
Then you must have liked Freddie Frinton.
Oh, Freddie.
oh, yeah. You know, I learned so much from all
Aren't we
those
fortunate,
wonderful-
all of us? Are we not really fortunate
Yes.
to have grown up with all those wonderful acts? Every week my
timing.
mother used to take me to Fellman's Theatre. I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
I grew up with people like Jewel and Warris,
Yes,
Hylda
all the
Baker,
big-
who
Yeah.
I thought was fabulous. She was sensational. The last thing that I know a lot of people possibly didn't get on with her very well because she was a bit of a strange lady, but that didn't
You say
take
that
away
again.
from her talent. I mean, she was funny. And the last thing I saw I thought was so poignant. You know the lovely Twickenham home for artists
Yes,
and Brinsworth House.
Brinsworth House, yes.
I had the occasion to go there one day with a cheque for Reg Swinson, and I walked in, and there was Hylda sitting down next to, was it Maurice and Cowley?
Yes,
Frank
yes.
Cowley.
Yes,
That's
yes,
right.
Frank Cowley.
And Frank Cowley was sitting there with a long beard
that's
and
right.
this black Homburg hat indoors with the suit on. He looked like a rabbi. And Hylda was sitting next to him with the handbag, and she said, "Well, of course, I said to him this morning, I said, what did I say? I said..." She was like that all day, and she was using him as her sort of Cynthia. And it was magic. It was like a sitcom.
You better shape up, 'cause I need a man. Oh, and my heart is set on you. Better shape up, you better understand. To my heart I must be true.
Nothing left for me to do. For the one that I want. The one that I want. The one I want. The one I need. Oh, yes, indeed.
If you're filled with infection, you're too sly to convey. Medicate in my direction. Feel your way.
I better shape up. 'Cause you need a
I
man.
need a man who can keep me satisfied.
I better shape up. If I'm gonna prove.
You better prove if my faith is justified. Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure down deep inside. You're the one that I want.
You know, I played once with her at Weymouth, and I went to say hello to her one night, and she's touring 3 monkeys with them. One leapt onto my shoulder, frightened the life out of me.
Yes.
She
She
was-
used to live in a
but she was-
caravan with these
But she
monkeys,
was
you know.
a good artist.
She was a very funny
Elfie
lady.
was going to tell us about the days of Dan Leno and Little Titch and all
I
the great...
beg your pardon.
Go on, no, seriously, you've got Robey.
You're much prettier than they were.
Well, but you know, even to watch Harry Lauder take the rehearsal, you know, the band call on a Monday, that was a lesson.
Yeah.
And
For hours.
yeah, and George Robey, you know, and there's a little recitation he used to do in his act, which I memorised it because I thought it was that funny, you know. It would seem at the workhouse some trouble arose re the pudding. 'Twas not of the best. So an aged inmate sent back his plate, accompanied by a request. Now if he complied, or whether he tried, I'm not sure, the point wasn't raised. But if the poor workhouse master accomplished the task, I'm more than surprised, I'm amazed.
I like it.
Going back to Freddie Frinton, now there was a good drunk.
Oh, yes, wonderful.
With a broken cigarette.
You know, he's still
Sugar in the
starring
morning.
on the continent, in Switzerland and Germany. Every Christmas they have dinner for one. And
Yes,
it's almost become a religion out there. They show that tape of his dinner for one every year. And of course each year the audience is getting younger and younger, and the older people know about it, and they have their families sit round, and it's almost like the Queen's
Of course, the
speech.
best of that was Bobby Howe's, because I did it in 4, 5, 6 when I took it with Vinnie Hale, and I did that sketch with Bobby Howe's. It was
Magic.
so wonderful
Yes.
because he was a wonderful drunk then. And of course, he loved to make me dry up in it, and I'm very good when they're trying to make me dry up. I never do. It's when they don't make me dry up that I can't speak.
But the strange thing about it is that most of the best drunks in the business were teetotalers.
Yes,
Now, Freddie Frinton never drank.
No, he didn't.
Neither did Jack Radcliffe.
No.
Now, there was Archie Glenn.
Yes.
Archie
yes.
Glenn. There were so many drunks that never drank.
Those
But some did, of
comedians.
course. But,
I think one of the best drunks was Billy Carroll.
Yeah.
Hilda Mundy.
Oh, darling. But they were
Great
so,
actor.
they were such. I've always loved comedians all my life, and I've had such fun with them always. They've got. And they used to be, when I was young, they used to be so beautifully, they're still pretty well dressed, but they always used to wear, when camel hair coats were in.
yes,
They always slung on the
Velvet
shoulders.
collars.
and slung on the shoulders.
Yes.
And the beautiful suits, and the shoes, and the cufflinks, and the shirts, and the wife sitting at the side with the grease towel when they came off, to wipe it all up.
yes. I'll tell you what.
To crew.
Crew,
Oh,
actors and fish. Anybody got any stories about crew?
Oh, rude.
Do you remember David Poole?
Oh, yes.
Well,
yes.
well, he was a terrible vent,
Yes.
But he had a marvellous act, great comedy act with his two dolls. He was the schoolmaster, and the two dolls were the pupils, you see. And they met. Rob Wilton and he met on Crew Station one Sunday afternoon, and Rob said, "Where are you going to next week, Dave?" And David said, "I'm going to the Lyceum, Sheffield." "Oh," Rob said, "you'll do well there. The lighting's bloody awful."
Rob Wilton was a fabulous one-word comedy,
Bobby.
because Rob was getting on in years, you know. And somebody said to him one day, "Rob, you must be fairly well off now. You've been doing it for years. You've been earning quite a lot." He said, "Why do you keep going at your age?" And Rob Wilton stuck his finger in his mouth and he said, "Vanity." Len, give us a record now. What's your favourite record? Have you got a favourite?
When I was very, very young,
Yeah.
I was most impressed with Maurice Chevalier. I saw the Love Parade.
Great
I
artist.
saw it so many times, and I thought, that's what I want to be when I grow up, to be a big boy. And I always remember Maurice Chevalier, the Love Parade.
Wonderful, oh, it's wonderful to be in love with you. Beautiful, you're so beautiful, you haunt me all day through. Every little breeze seems to whisper Louise, birds in the trees seem to twitter Louise. Each little rose tells me it knows I love you, love you. Every little beat that I feel in my heart seems to repeat what I felt at the start. Each little sigh tells me that I adore you, Louise.
Right, now, here we are back. And I might remind the listeners that on my left I have Doris Hare, bless her.
Hello, it's
And then
lovely
I've
to
got
be here.
and I've got Joan Savage.
Joan Savage, the singing dustbin.
And on my right, Len Lowe.
It's lovely to be here with the dustbin and Doris Hare.
And Alfie Pearson and Bob and Alf Pearson.
Oh, darling, so lovely.
Rob Wilton's story. They're in digs, quite a few of them. And the landlady comes in the morning. She said, "Can't give you any tea this morning, no coffee." She said, "There's no water. We've had no water all night, all morning." She said, "But no tea, no coffee." And Rob's just sitting there and he looked at her and said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I'm just wondering what she boiled the eggs in."
He said to us one time, "Have you been to Sheffield Empire lately, lads?" We said, "Yeah, we were there a few months ago." He says, "Is that big commissioner still there on the front with a big moustache, shouting the odds? Is he still there?" He says, "I hated him. Oh, I hated him." He says, "You could hear him in the dressing room, shouting the odds." He says, "There he was, all-star variety, Bill. Hetty King, Albert Whelan, wee Georgie Wood, Rob Wilton, plenty of seats. I hated him."
You brought up a name there, Georgie Wood. Now, Georgie Wood was
Georgie.
opening the pantomime with the laundry basket as wishy-washy,
Yes.
and he's reading a newspaper. Now, what he didn't know is that Diana Dawes' first husband, who was Dennis,
to America.
Dennis,
Yes.
he put two damn great stage weights, which weighed a ton, into the basket, you see, and Georgie didn't know this, and he's reading the paper, and he waits till the curtain's well up, pauses a minute, folds up the newspaper, throws it into the basket, goes to lift the basket and disappears out of sight because he can't lift it.
You reminded me. We were playing Midsummer, Cardiff, done the first house, lovely warm evening. We're standing outside the stage door. Eddie Gray, a singer, my brother and a couple of people. And we're just there getting a bit of air, and a little dog comes along, a little terrier. And Eddie says, "This is a cute little thing." And come on, here, gets down. And he tickles it under the chin and rubs its ears. And that lovely little dog, we're looking very bored. And the lady comes over, she said, "You like dogs, don't you?" He said, "Yes, love." He said, "Is it yours?" She said, "Away." He said, "I've had it a long time now." He said, "Did you ever have any trouble with its mouth there?" She said, "Well, funny you should say that," she said. "He's been a bit off lately." He said, "Why didn't you..." He said, "You know the chemist cutting graves in Queen Street round the corner?" "Yes." He said, "When you're going past there," he said, "nip in there and ask for a little tin of titliff paste." I said, "What?" He said, "Get him a little tin of titliff paste." He said, "Get him and rub it on his gums. Rub it on his..." She said, "Oh, I'll do that, I might do." He said, "Oh, yes." He said, "And whilst you're there," he said, "see, because it's a bit thin, see if you can get a small bottle of stabbing mixture for him." So he said, "Write it down. Yes, titliff paste, a small bottle of stabbing mixture." She said, "Oh, thank you, are kind." She said, "Are you a vet, have I? You been a vet?" He said, No, love." He said, "I used to breed these." She said, "Oh, did you? What made you give it up?" He said, "Well," he said, "I crossed one with Georgie Wood and it wasn't a success."
I told you about Thora Hird and the way she could cry. I found a poem that I read to her that made her cry. And it was written walking along Whitby Bay, looking at the lighthouse. I don't know why I did it. And it goes something like this. There's a little stick of grease paint that will not be used again. There's a pair of baggy trousers on the door. There's a funny little pointed hat, a pair of clumsy boots, now derelict and ready for the store. Little Ginkgo circus clown, a laughing painted face, the idol of the millions in his humorous disgrace. He worshipped every moment with the little girls and boys, the ring, the smell, the sawdust, the excitement and the noise. The little clown kept falling down. He never seemed to mind. And only little Ginkgo knew that he was going blind. The custard tarts, the water squirt and mount the bucking horse, the chase, the race, the broken brace, he'd worked them all, of course. The little clown was sweat and strain to win a small encore. He knew that he would carry on till he could see no more. He dreamed of bigger, better tricks. He lay awake at night to think of bigger, better stunts and bring much more delight. Ah, that was it, the acrobats, those spangled men of space. They'd climb rope ladders up, and then with poise and grace they would entrance. If little Ginkgo followed them, he'd lead a pretty dance. Up and up the swaying ladder went the little clown, and laughter came to greet him every time that he looked down. His latest trick would crown the night. His pulse began to race. The crowds were shrieking with delight each time they saw his face. And the best was yet to come, for, like a fly upon a wall, he'd come down upside down just like an alligator crawl. The top, no time to stop, the crowd was shouting might and main. But as he bent to take his hold, his eyes went dim again. A gasp, a roar, then silence as downward fell the speck. Poor little Ginkgo knew no pain because he broke his neck. He died among the sawdust, and from that circus tent he took a world of laughter up to heaven as he went. There's a little stick of grease paint I shall keep forevermore, a souvenir that makes me proud and sad. A pair of baggy trousers, the ones that Ginkgo wore. To you, the little clown. To me, my dad.
Very poignant.
Very.
So true, dear.
Yes.
Train journeys.
Ah.
You know, you used to have those long ones on Sunday.
Oh, God.
We're talking 30, 40 years ago or
Yes.
more. And the trains were old-fashioned steam trains, cold,
Cold.
and sometimes not a corridor.
Shunting into
Right.
the sidings. Everything.
So the company, review company, the comic is the star, the acts, and they're going from Middlesbrough to Swansea on the Sunday.
Oh,
what a
God.
journey.
4 days. sort of.
Yeah.
Oh,
Of course. So what you used to do, if you remember, you get there and you get in your carriage, and the girls would, ladies would get in one, but the fellas would all get in the other. It's a card school.
Oh,
7, 8
yes.
hours.
They'd lose all their salaries.
And you get in there with a card school,
yes.
you take your jacket off, you undo your tie, you take your waistcoat off, shoes off, slippers on. You're there for 6, 7 hours. They're playing cards. And they're playing away there, and we stop at Crewe. Train stops at Crewe, and the fella says, "Oh, hang on, there's a chocolate machine there. Do you remember the..."
Yes, oh, yeah.
Oh,
So he went out, nipped out, and he's at the machine for quite a time. He's got the money and can't get it to work. And he tries the machine, he bashes it, and so on. So finally gets the railway. He said, "No, that's ruined, mate." He said, the one up there, about 150 yards. So goes up the platform and starts to get the chocolate. By now, the train is just going to move. And he gets his chocolate 3 or 4 bars quick, runs and jumps on the train as it's moving. It's all right, shuts the door, so he starts to walk back to his own compartment to play the card game.
Yeah.
Does 2 or 3 compartments and the guards van, and that's it. He can't get any farther. So he waits for a while. The guy comes in and I said, what do you do? He said, no, my carriage is further on. He said, he said, further on where? He said, the other part. He said, what are you talking about? He said, the train separated at Crewe. This is going to Euston. He's got his slippers and his shirt and a waistcoat and 4 bars of chocolate, his jacket, and he stays on the train all the way to Euston. Now, he's got to get to Swansea. He's got no money. His wallet's in the coat. He's got a couple of bob on him. And it's freezing. And he gets some newspaper, stuffs it down his shirt. He's got no clothes on it. Some up the trousers and makes his way across to Paddington. He's trying to find, how do we get to Swansea? He explains everything, finally gets on the train. There's another Sunday journey, late. Gets into Swansea very late at night, and he gets to the freezing coach. She said, who are you? He said, I'm so-and-so. She said, oh, she said, you're very lucky. I was just going to bed. She said, haven't you got any luggage? She said, well, it was with the company. All right, so he gets to bed, gets up the next morning, exhausted, goes to the theatre, and the comic governor says, now listen, you've got to stop this gallivanting about. He said, I don't know where you're chasing off all over the place. He said, you've got some work to do.
Gallivanting, Talking about gallivanting and fun, you must have all been entertaining the troops at some time or other. And I got a funny story about the troops, because when I was actually in the army, I was sent to entertain at various places, you know. And one particular place I went to, and everything on the bill went like a bomb. You know, the pianist tore them up. The dancing juggler, Eddie Gray, that's young Eddie Gray's brother. Charlie. Eddie Leroy, he worked on.
Eddie Leroy, that's right.
Dancing juggler, he tore them up and so on. And every time I went on, I died on my feet. And I'm the principal comic, and I died before every entrance.
You don't know, get heartbreak.
And at the finish, I came off and I said, Sergeant Major, why didn't they like me? He said, they liked you, son. They didn't understand you. This is the Polish Brigade. Marvellous, isn't it?
Oh.
Yeah, marvellous. It's me doing my patter. They didn't know what we were talking about.
I played Liverpool, and when I was doing all the shipmates, you know, and all that stuff, and I, you know, the Queen and everything, I went out, and I had a very chic, it was very amusing. Yes. It was Rob Stewart playing the piano. And I went on the first time. I died. I came up, what did I do wrong? Well, what did I do wrong? And I said to the stage manager, what happened? I'd only done 10 minutes and I usually do 12. He said, oh, well, he said, don't worry, love. He said, they're all Chinese out there. They don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
The whole audience was Chinese.
Yeah. Then I'll make you feel rotten, though, when you go all the way down on your feet.
Gives you a turn,
Makes you
doesn't
sweat.
it?
Wait a minute, folks. Now, just hold on a minute. I think Joan's been sitting there too quiet. Don't you think she ought to do something?
Oh, yes, come on.
Come on, Joan, will you?
Yes, why not?
Come on.
All right, then, all right.
Force yourself.
Go on. Paris, she's like a lover. Paris, she's like a friend. When you visit Paris, you discover it is your journey's end. I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, but La France, maintenant, she is my land. Oh, je t'adore, Paris. You have beaucoup that appeal to me. Un soupçon of sad, un soupçon of glad. The onion soupçon, not bad, in Paris. Comme ci, comme ça, et comme ça, comme si. That's how I feel. Comme ci, comme ça, et comme ça, comme si. That's how I feel when I'm in Paris. Your right bank, your left bank, a part of my heart. Oh, je t'adore. Paris, gai Paris, cher Paris, mauvais Paris. I love every
everything about Paris. I love everyone and everyone loves me. Les garçons, les gendarmes, les gamins, les misérables, tous les mondes. Sometimes Paris, she is laughing like the babbling brook, n'est-ce pas? And sometimes she is cruel. Oh, but when you are in love in the spring, then Paris, she is glorious. Oh, yeah. Hey, come on. April in Paris, May in Montmartre, June in January. Me, moi, when I am in Paris, I am, how you say, happy. Avec mon homme, I go to the bois. I dine again, even dine at Chez Maxime. I am withered, as it is not so content. Hey, come on. L'amour, toujours l'amour, toujours l'amour, l'amour, le merrier. Oh, you could have your New York with its rush, rush, rush. Your London avec its tea and toppats. Give me Paris. I could kiss the Champs-Élysées, kiss the Rue de la Paix, kiss the Saint-Honoré, kiss the Montmartre, kiss Montparnasse. Kiss your right bank, your left bank, a part of my heart. Oh, je t'adore.
Oh, but in pantomime, it was funny. Emile Littler had a very little sense of humour, actually. You had to stick to the script. Every year was the same. On one occasion at the Alhambra Bradford, there's a little kid about 4 in the box just above the stage. And at the interval, they all had tea. You see the audience?
Oh, yes.
Yes, all tea.
Clatter of those teacups.
I
was on the gag line.
In the second half, the King of Sylvania stood there, and every one of the cast had to go in and say, "I claim to be your son and heir." And the 2 boys went on, you and your brother went on and said, "We claim to be we were twins," and so on. And then I had to walk on. You can probably remember this. And I said, "Your royal nibs." And before I could get another word out, this little kid said to me, "Have you had your tea yet, Charlie?" And I said, "Pardon me, excuse me, your royal nibs. What did you say, darling?" She said, "Have you had your tea yet?" And I said, "No, darling. Have you had your..." "Yes, we had cream cakes." And I had about a 5-minute discourse with it. It was the place was in hysterics. Yeah. You remember this, Len? And they came steaming round me and said, "How dare you do that? It wasn't in the script." I said, "You dummy, you couldn't have bought it. No. You couldn't have bought material like that." No. But he didn't like it. Funny man.
The first dancer show that we did was from Scotland, and we had this little 8-handed concert party that we'd knocked together, and a little coach, and it was Kilcreggan, I think it was, up in the mountains by Loch Lomond somewhere. So it was December, and we set off about 4 o'clock from Glasgow. And, we couldn't find it. Even the local bus driver couldn't find it. And we went round and round these little roads. Because, you only had a headlight about a square inch.
Yeah, that's right. Water.
And we saw little hurricane lamps shaking in the distance, And so we pulled up, and it was a little sentry go, a little fellow on sentry. And he says, "Are you the concert party?" And we said, "Yes." "Oh," he says, "thank God you've come. We've had nothing here for 6 weeks." He said, "Follow me." And he turned and he walked straight into a ditch. Up to his waist in water. And he says, "Oh, that's the 3rd time today I've done that."
Do you remember Sid Millwall and it?
Yes, of course.
There was a coloured boy called Cyril Leahy.
Yes.
He was a bit like Step and Fetch It. I do, man, and all the time. And he was in the army. And just for the day, they were all lined up, and the general came over to inspect them. And E Company were on the end like a shower, you can imagine. And he's got all his boots and everything all laid out in front of him. He isn't wearing his pack, it's all on the floor. He said, "What's this?" He said, "Well, I got a chitty." He got a chitty for excuse boots, excuse this, excuse pack, excuse that. And so he was in dead trouble, you see. He said, "What are you going to do when you get on the other side?" He said, "I don't know, I don't want to be here." You see, when he gets to the other side, he's in worse trouble because there's a fellow with a red band on his hat, stars up here, passing, and he didn't salute him, and he called him over. He said, "You boy, here, now." He said, See that up there on my shoulder? Why didn't you salute? He said, but I thought you was an ensign man. He was in trouble all the time.
You know, we supported Gracie Fields when she did some of her... we were 3 weeks with her. This is not funny, but it's interesting. We went to John Brown's shipyard.
Oh, yeah.
And
on
the Clyde. And, you know, there's about 5,000 fellas all in the yards.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all on the level.
Yeah.
And the stage was the end of a wagon, you know, the tailboard of an army wagon with a little upright piano on. So after about 5 minutes, Gracie done a couple of songs, or whatever it was, there was shouts that they couldn't see her from the back.
Yeah.
So Gracie, she climbed up on top of this upright piano, and she knelt on the piano and did the rest of her act.
Kneeling on the piano.
Marvellous. And when she, you know, about 30 minutes she did, and when she came down, she could hardly walk. And I thought that was absolutely marvellous.
Have you had, I suppose you must have had some embarrassing moments on stage or backstage? Any embarrassing moment? I'll tell you, one of mine was when I was doing an invisible... From a man in America, I bought some invisible makeup, which you rubbed into your skin and it disappeared. And then when the UV light shone, it just showed up your hands. I had the eyebrows, the ears, and around the mouth to do the California eye colour. And when I put this on and, you know, dried the hands, and I went to relieve the call of nature, you know. Yeah. And naturally, when I came off, I would just go onto the stage, do my stuff, and when I go give them the cue, clap the hands, you know, all the lights go out, the UV's on, my hands lit up, and all my flies lit up where I'd been. And I felt so embarrassed. Yeah. This is the Palladium, you know, and there it is glaring in the darkness.
Do you think that's embarrassing?
It was to me.
Have you ever had the pleasure of playing a theatre called the Empire Falkirk? Now, the reason for this is there is a circle, and the circle finishes, it comes right up flush with the proscenium. In other words, you can walk right up to the flush of the proscenium and look on the stage, which has a little 4-foot apron out. So you're actually over the stage. You're there. Yeah. I have come back from America. I'm working with Sonny Farrar, and we are breaking in a new routine with the band to come to London. That's why we're doing Greenock, Paisley, Falkirk, and all these places.
Which band?
With Sonny Farrar and the Sonny Boys.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And we're breaking it, and I'm doing the hit number of the era, which I tell you about. And I'm out there singing this number, and all of a sudden behind me I hear a few bum notes, and it's fluttering, and giggling. What's going on, you see? And out of the corner, the field of vision of mine, I can see something happening here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, you see. And as I finish, and there's a little boy there. And the little boy has walked along, felt the call of nature, and in order to relieve himself, somebody said, go on in the dark on the corner over the bar. And he's weed on the stage while I'm singing. And the boys blame me. They say, well, if you will go out there and sing, and every time it rains, it rains.
Oh, yeah, that's sad.
That's absolutely true.
The worst thing that ever happened to me, after I'd done the pantomime and I was the witch, I'd left school, and now Annette Schultz puts me in the Tower Circus.
Oh, yeah.
You see, I was riding elephants, hanging upside down on trapezes, I had this wonderful accolade given to me. I thought it was great to walk out with the ringmaster as sort of a ring lady. I had the black stockings
spangles.
on, and the red tailcoat and the shiny silk top hat, the white gloves, and I thought I was the bee's knees. You see, got the eyelashes and the full works. Walk out there, I am so pleased with myself and so proud at this momentous occasion. And, of course, there was the grand parade with all the wonderful circus artists and the acts, the bears going across and the dogs and the ponies and the horses, and at the end, the elephants. Yep. And the biggest one at the back, as it arrived at my side, felt the call of nature. Now, if you have ever seen an elephant spending a penny, you really have to. And it was all over me. The eyelashes were the rivers of black mascara running down, the sequins melted, the hair went, and I never thought myself the bee's knees again.
But you know, the saddest thing was Michael Bentine. I was in pantomime with him, and he was a lovely boy. He loves children, you know. And he said to me one day, because, you know, everything has to go bang for him and explode and all that to be funny, and he has to make a noise. And he said to me one day, he said, you see, you've got it. I said, what? He said, sympathy, they love you because you're Simple Simon. He said, but they hate me because I'm the wicked uncle. I said, well, you don't have to be wicked. Mike, don't take notice of me. He's got me with the kids all the time. Play for sympathy. He said, do you mind if I do? I said, not at all, because you play how you like. So he said, I'll play for sympathy. Well, now, before I go any further, you know that if the golden threads are in, or the, whatever it is, the old ladies are in, bless them, you only got to mention them and you get a round of applause.
Yes.
So he goes on and he does a gag about a table that collapses, you see, and he starts off, with those lovely white teeth. And he makes such a noise on his opening that a kid begins to cry in its mother's arms in the front row, and he said, "Oh, madam, I'll tell you how you can stop that. Open the port of the darling's mouth and pour in 1.5 pounds of molten lead." And he said, "It may not do him any good, but it'll be a marvellous doorstop." And they died on him. And I'm in this corner stage. He's playing it for sympathy, you see. Well, then he thought, rescue, and the sweat's pouring off him, and he thought, Darby and Joan Clubs. And you can almost see his mind ticking over. And he said, the Darby and Joan Clubs. And he said, now, you see that table? It was made in the days of William the Conqueror. Made to last, he said. And the table collapses, of course, you see. You've all heard of William the Conqueror. Then he looks at the audience and he says, "Some of you must have known him." And he walked off to the sound of his own feet. I was in hysterics.
Well, I had an embarrassing moment. We were playing at the Victoria Palace, and I used to come out sharpish after the finale, to get down to the tube station on the district line to Turnham Green, you see. So one night I was going down the stairs, and there was 2 young fellas and their girlfriends, and I heard them mention Bob and Alf Pearson, you see. So I thought, I'll hang on a bit and see what they say, you see. So one of them said, "Well, I never thought they would look like that, hearing them on the radio. I never thought they would be like that." And the other girl said, "No," she said, "I didn't. I thought the little one was horrible."
Do you remember the great magician Horace Goulding?
Oh,
yes.
do I ever?
Great magician. Had all the wonderful props. Well, he used to travel, looked after all the props. Jimmy Lee.
Oh, Jimmy.
And Jimmy used to look after birds, the doves, and particularly the 3 ducks. The 3 ducks. And they are playing, I'm not sure whether it was Chatham or Maidstone. Chatham, the theatre where the back, the water comes up at the back.
Yes,
Chatham.
That's right.
And it's Monday, and he's getting all the props ready, and so, and it's a lovely day, the sun's out, and Jimmy thinks, "That's marvellous, the water. I'll give the ducks a little swim." So he ties a piece of string to one leg of the duck and ties it to the wall, gives them about 7 or 8 feet, and there they are, paddling around, lovely. And he gets on with the props and doing the things, and the sun's lovely, and he goes home to lunch. Has lunch, and after lunch just sits and chats, a little nod off, and the phone rings. And he says, "Is Mr. Lee there?" He says, "Yes." He said, "Can he come to the theatre?" We need. So he goes back to the theatre. "What's the trouble?" They said, "Well, look, the tide had gone out and there's 3 ducks hanging by one leg 4 foot down the wharf wall."
Alfie, at this point, old son, what about a record from you?
Well, any record of Layton and Johnson, because they were a big influence on us right at the beginning.
Oh, yes.
When we were only teenagers, before we were in the business.
Yeah.
They were at the height of their success. And I suppose, we did sort of go their way a little bit, but when you've got 2 fellas with a piano, When we did come into the business, we were working at the Paramount Cinema in Cardiff, and Layton and Johnson were at the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed in some digs, and Mr. Hodge, there were famous digs in Cardiff, and funnily enough, Clarence Johnson was also staying at the digs. Yeah. He had the suite upstairs and we had the downstairs. And one day, Mr. Hodge said, "Mr. Johnson would like to have a word with you." We thought, "Oh, God, blimey."
Yeah.
So we went up to his room and we met the great man, Clarence Nathaniel. And he was very nice. And he said, "We've heard of these writers when the record review was saying another Layton and Johnson, or the white Layton and Johnson and all that." He says, "But really, he says, it's a lot of rubbish." He said, "There'll never be another Layton and Johnson, really." And he said, "When you get a bit more famous, if you do, and get better known," he said, "there'll never be a Bob and Alf Pearson, another Bob and Alf Pearson." He says, "Because nobody has our personality and nobody has yours."
That's right.
So he says, "How can
Never another one. You'll never another one. You're another personality.
That's right, yeah.
So,
you get so sick of it.
All right then, for you, Alfie, here it is, Layton and Johnson.
On a
like today, we pass the time away, writing love letters in the sand. How you laughed when I cried, each time I saw the tide take our love letters in the sand. You made a vow that you would always be true, but somehow that vow meant nothing to you. Now my poor heart just aches with every wave that breaks over love letters in the sand. The sunbeams kissed the sands, my fate was in your hands, the day I met you, dear. And though I found you gone, your memory lingers on, I can't forget you, dear.
When we come into business, I don't know if you're the same as me, I used to stand on the side of the stage and watch the performers. I remember my young son Peter used to go and watch Randolph Sutton. He was enraptured with him. And I used to watch every act I could watch.
Me too.
Bartlett and Ross.
Even the MD, I could conduct the band by the end of the week.
Well, I watched a fella and I suffered for him. His name, he was a corny comic called Jack Warman. On behalf of the working classes. Thin man, a gaunt man, and he used to walk on in sort
Miserable
of...
man.
Oh, yes. Not really terribly funny. But he used to say, hello, workmates, you know, and he'd go through the pangs of life, you know, with a mournful voice. And he had a terrible cold. And he sneezed, and word of honour, his false teeth flew out of his mouth over the footlights, and he went like that. And by freak of chance, he caught him. And he got the biggest run of applause he'd ever heard in his life. It's true. And he whipped round, put him in it, and went back smiling. I'm dying with embarrassment, and he's loving it because he never got a round of applause like it in his life before. But well, it was a terrible thing to happen. I would have died if it'd been me. Oh, but God,
Terrible things you do to get along.
Oh, yeah.
We had a thing like that. We got a big round of applause that we never expected.
Really?
Yeah, at the Glasgow Empire. You know, there's a tremendous rake on the stage.
Yes.
You know, from the back down to the footlights.
Yeah.
And this was when they first started doing high-speed variety.
Oh, yes.
The act in front of you were taking their calls, and in that time...
You were on.
The set and everything was on. So the act was taking their calls in front of us, and they rushed the piano on, and then the curtains went up, and we started, and I thought, what on earth's Bob playing at? What is it? You know, it's all the wrong notes, you see. Yeah. And suddenly the piano was going down towards the footlights. Well, you know, I ran round the front and tried to stop it. A great big grand piano, and I couldn't. Bob got up, and the orchestra started getting out of the pit, you know, and the audience were going mad. You thought it was great, you know, they were cheering. It was the best opening we ever had.
Yeah. Oh, very funny.
Oh, dear, they do. It's an agony.
I should never forget Bob and Alf walking into my dressing room at Llandudno. I don't know if you remember this, Alf. We were playing, and Bob and Alf were performing a little way up the road. And they both walked into my room, and Bob, with his mournful face, because he had got a lovely mournful expression, you know, and he was the taller one of the two, and he walked straight into me, and he said to me, Charlie, are you going to join the protest march? And I said, what protest march? He said, against the reopening of Dewsbury Empire.
Wonderful
Oh,
magicians. Did you ever see a man called the Great Claude?
Oh, yes,
Oh,
the great Claude.
That was absolutely...
Willis's brother, that was.
Yeah.
Was it really?
yes.
Oh, I thought he was magic. He would not really say very much, but he would come on and do a trick.
And give yourself a medal, didn't you?
Yes, and he would have a small medal that he would pin onto his chest. And if the thing didn't go very well, he would take the medal off, and then a bit later on the thing went disastrously badly, and he got the Great Claude written on the bottom, and he'd lift that off and put back the Great Claude.
Great Claude.
And then when things got better, he could have bigger and bigger medals on his chest.
Well,
Wonderful.
I used to think I was a fast-talking comic, in those days. When you're young, you know it all, you think you do. I thought I was very fast, and ad-libbing and all that sort of thing. And I learnt my lesson on the Wednesday when I was playing with Nellie Wallace and a fellow called Harry Kahn, a mental marvel from America, which Jack Hylton brought over. And he was really a mental marvel. He could add up 4,236,324 multiplied by 9.
Yeah, but of course nobody would ever know whether he was right or not.
No, but it was a mental marvel. His last trick was to be hoisted up by his ankles with his back towards the audience, up against a great big thing, and he'd write upside down and backwards something from a newspaper whilst reciting Gray's Elegy or any poem. Now that was his main trick. Yeah.
That was variety.
But his first trick was to take a small blackboard about 3 feet big and lean over it with the chalk and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, 3 long words written upside down and backwards, pronounced forwards. So, a long word, please. Saskatchewan, written forward upside down, pronounced backwards. N-A-N, and he'd write Saskatchewan." That's clever, round of applause. Now, on the Wednesday, this is what happened. He got the first word, and then he said, "Another long word, please. Mississippi." He said, "Yes. Written upside down and backwards, pronounced forward, M-I-S-S. Marvellous, round of applause. And he said, "One more long word, please." And from the gallery, a voice yelled out, "Rubber." He said, "Not long enough." They said, "Well, stretch it." And the place fell in. And I thought, don't think you're fast, because the boys in the gallery are very quick.
They were wonderful, weren't they, really?
Canella and Eddie. American juggling act. And his favourite gag was the double talk. And we used to go into, like, the Cafe the Express regularly. There's always 3 or 4 of you. And he'd say, right, the waiter come up and said, "All right, now, what are you having? Coffee. All right, it's 4 coffees, apple pie and cream. Yeah, apple pie and cream, 2, just apple pie without, and I'll have a lady crunch for shrimp plus cream on the side." Now, what we do, she said, "I beg your pardon?" I said, "Look, honey, am I not explaining myself? 4 coffees, 2 apple pies and cheese, 2 apple pies without cheese, a lady crunch, pickles, scotch, and cream on the side for me." She said, "I'm sorry, I didn't quite get it." So he'd do it, but he said, "Look, sweetheart, and don't want to be difficult, could you get the manager? All right?" So he said, "Yes." So he said, "If you're having the coffee," and the manager happened to be a manageress. She came up, she said, "What's the trouble? Can I help you?" He said, "Nothing at all. 4 coffees, apple pie and cream. Is it all right for him to leave his bike outside?"
But they do. It was terrible. Eddie Gray used to do it when we were doing Fools in Paradise on tour. And Eddie Gray and my sister Wynne was to play the piano, which she couldn't, of course. And the Gorman brothers, the 6 Coney Islanders, me and Max, and we used to go out. And he said, "Go on, as we got into the shopping." I used to go into Woolworths, buy all this, and Eddie would do could I have 4 of those cans of Varsali, and at the post office at 4 o'clock. And they would say, yes, okay, right. And now, what would you like? You'd like a fling balls? Well, I've got 3 fling balls here, which I just want. I was giving it to the man over there, but he's gone. So you have the... And they used to do this. And they used to do it to my sister. My sister who had no control at all. Drop his things about.
Now, before we go any further, I think it's Doris's turn for a record, isn't it?
Oh, yes. What I would love is a record by Jean Sablon, who was the heartthrob of France and everywhere. And he was so attractive. And I was doing the André Charlot at that time. The days when we used to all dress up in full evening dress to record.
That's it.
On the air.
Wonderful.
And André Charlot said to me, "Doris, I'm going to let you introduce Jean Sablon." Well, I got his records, and I thought, I was swooning there.
No.
And then, of course, when I met him, it was marvellous. And André Charlot said to me, "Doris, you introduce him. You introduce him as Jean Sablon. He is going to sing Faut qu'il passe son me voir." I said, "But Gov, I'm not my French. It's Sablon. Talk to him." So I thought, "Oh, yes, hey. I talked to him, tried to keep me off him. And I said... "Oh, Jean, is that right?" He said, "Yes, Doris, that is very good. You call me Jean Sablon." And I said, "How do I pronounce Vous qui passez sans me voir?" He said, "Perfectly. It doesn't matter if you don't say it properly. It is good. It is lovely. And so I thought, oh, how marvellous. I was in New York with Emily Williams doing Night Was Fall, doing a sustaining programme for NBC, and I was in John Roll's room doing this thing and trying to work out something, and I was caught, and they billed me as Doris Hare, the Piccadilly Hillbilly. Tie that on your handkerchief.
Right.
And I was in, and suddenly the door opened, and in came Dreamboat Charlie, dear, Jean Sablon. He said, Doris, how wonderful. Are you going to be here with me all the time? Of course, I was with him all the time, let me tell you. And he was absolutely marvelous. We used to go everywhere, all the clubs. We used to go down to Harlem, when you could go to Harlem then.
Yes.
And these wonderful hotels, and this beautiful gentleman would dance like a dream. And we were in this club doing all of his house, and suddenly he was tapped on the shoulder and they said, please, you will have to leave. And he said, what am I? What? I am to leave. I am not to leave. I am dancing with Miss Hare. He said, yes. And he said, you're dancing too close together.
Oh, no.
And they chucked us off the floor, dear.
Did they?
They did. And I mean, well, my memory is it was really rather soapy. And so I was the first one.
What record would you like then?
It's the Fiac.
Oh,
It's
Fiac.
wonderful.
Yes, let's have that.
That would be divine.
Let's have it.
If I go into a swoon, wake me up.
Right.
Un fiacre allait trottinant, tiens, Julia, hop là, un fiacre allait trottinant, jaune avec un cocher blanc. Derrière les stores baissés, tiens, Julia, hop là, derrière les stores baissés, on entendit des baisers. Puis une voix criant Léon, Julia, hop là, puis une voix criant Léon, tu me fais mal au ton lorgnon. Un vieux monsieur qui passait, Julia, hop là, un vieux monsieur qui passait, s'écrie mais on dirait que c'est ma femme dont j'entends la voix. Julia, hop là, ma femme dont j'entends la voix, il se lance sur le pavé en bois. Mais il glisse sur le sol mouillé, Julia, hop là, mais il glisse sur le sol mouillé, craque le vlin escrabouillé. Du fiacre, une dame sort et dit, Julia, hop là, du fiacre, une dame sort et dit, oh chouette Léon, c'est mon mari, y a plus besoin de nous cacher. Julia, hop là, y a plus besoin de nous cacher, donne donc 100 sous à se cocher. Un fiacre allait trottinant, jaune avec un cocher blanc. Un fiacre allait trottinant, jaune avec un cocher blanc.
Do you know, ever since I've been in show business, I've always felt a little bit privileged, you know. You must have felt it somewhere or other, haven't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I love being what I am. I love my idea of complete and utter heaven is to walk onto that stage, get a round of applause, see it's absolutely packed, and then hear them laugh.
Yeah.
Yes.
That, to me,
Yeah.
is bliss.
But do you ever feel, have you got any incident where you've been favoured because you're in show business?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And anywhere I go in the world, dear,
Yeah.
they come to see, hey, out the bussy mommy.
That's because on the buses.
Because I'm on the buses.
Yes.
Out the bussy mommy. I've been kissed by Yugoslav, Serbian. I've been kissed.
you.
Yeah, and a lot of sailors, too.
You're so lucky, Mike.
I always said during the war that I was the actor who was kissed by more sailors than anybody else.
You must have been, yeah.
Because I had the whole of the Merchant Navy, and if any of you listen to me now, I still love you all. You're all wonderful, and I wish I could kiss you all again. But, I mean, it really is
There'll
a
be a queue
very
now outside
exciting
the
thing.
studio.
Yeah. Do you know, it's a funny thing that since I've been broadcasting, which is 50 years or more, but I always feel that the mic can weed out fakes, you know. And I always feel that I'm privileged in that I can talk to Nellie as a singular person, say, hello, Nell, how are you, dear? Or I can talk to the whole nation, and I'm embracing the whole lot. You know, it's a wonderful feeling.
It is.
I think it's a marvellous thing to be able. I mean, you've been doing it for years, Charlie, and we all have, and like the boys there, with their lovely voices and the wonderful act they had. And we've been so lucky to be in when you really meant something when you walked onto that stage. You didn't have to have the microphones up your nose and all over the place.
No.
You went on there and you were a personality and you did it. Yeah. You knew how to get on and you knew even more importantly how to get off.
But it's wonderful tonight that we can sit here and enjoy and reminisce and have such fun. Because years ago, like you said, Len, you would all be on the train together and you'd all be doing
on
the
a Sunday.
Nowadays, with the motorways and with one-nighters and this, that, you hardly see each other for long enough to be able to get down and reminisce and have a chat.
This is the whole point. The reason why the Water Rats are a brotherhood is based on the fact that we shared dressing rooms, we shared digs, we shared everything together.
Absolutely.
In our spare time, we'd have a coffee together, we'd learn steps, he'd teach me his routine, I'd teach him mine, and so on. And so, therefore, it was a brotherhood.
Yes, indeed.
And old-time variety people were of a kind, of all birds of a feather. Now, it's a case of we're playing the Palladium. This is where the gig is tonight, boys.
Yes.
We waited for a lifetime to play the Palladium.
Yes. Yes.
Nice things that happen to you, you know, is when people come up and ask for your autograph. We were at the Eastbourne at the Hippodrome there with that Golden Years of Music Hall company, you see, and we used to go up sometimes after a matinee up into the Circle Bar and have either a drink or a pot of tea and that. We all used to go up, and very frequently Eddie Gray used to come and see us and have a chat, you see. So we're sitting round one day, and a lady comes up and asks for autographs, you see. So, you know, she recognised Elsie and Doris and Sandy and Leslie Saroni and Bob and I and that, but she couldn't place this other fellow that was at the table. So she said to Eddie, she said, I can't place you in the show. And he said, no. He said, I'm not in the show. He said, I'm a cross-channel swimmer.
Typical Eddie Gray remark.
He said, I'm training to swim the channel. He said, I had very bad luck yesterday. She said, oh? He said, yes. He said, I got to within 200 yards of the French coast, and I was taken short and had to swim all the way back. And she said, I'm sorry. I hope you have better luck next time. And he says these things with an absolute never a flicker of an eyelid.
You're talking about autographs, so I love it when they come up and say, didn't you used to be Charlie Chester?
Yes,
And I say, yes, I died 3 weeks ago. You know, it's frightening. But now,
you ever have trouble, any of you, with money in the theatre?
Money?
You know, you talk about the good times and the laughs you have, but you forget about the tough times when you're fighting for a few
treasury.
quid.
£15 to be found and treasury.
I must tell you,
would you go out for having treasury?
Yeah. I am with many years ago at the Hylton Orchestra. We're at the Palladium, we're big, and I get a lot of money, I think. And I suddenly discover, I hear the chaps talking, they're talking about, you know, Billy's on 12, and so-and-so's on 18, and so-and-so's on 23, and I think, what are they talking about? So I said to one of the particular boys that I was friends, what do you mean? He said, well, that's what they get. I said, what are you talking about? £18 a week and £20 a week? I said, I'm only getting 7, which in those days was a fortune.
Indeed,
But they said, you what? Come on, you're getting more than that. I said, no, I'm getting... Well, go and ask him. Don't stand for that.
What did you play in the orchestra then?
I used to play guitar and sing.
Ah, yes.
And dance. So I thought that I'd find out that I'm the lowest paid member of the orchestra. And the boys start up. He said, don't stand for that, Len. Don't tell him. Oh, I wouldn't stand for that. Oh, don't be silly. I mean, you entitle another £5, and they get me at it.
Yeah.
And I really get worked up, you see, and I don't realise they've got it up for me. We're at the Palladium. So I go in, knock at the door, and you always called the governor Jack. Always.
Yeah.
When you called him Mr. Hilton, there was something wrong.
Yeah.
So I go in, knock at the door, says, come in. I said, oh, hello, Jack. He said, oh, hello, Leonard. Oh, all right. He said, what's your problem? I said, well, Mr. Hylton. He said, Mr. Hylton, he said, what the bloody hell's worrying you? I said, well, no, Jack, I was just wondering, like, is there a chance, like, of getting a rise? And I had in mind the £5 when I went in. I've gone to about £1 mentally now. So he said, oh, yes. He said, what do you think you've got in mind, then? So I said, well, surely 10 shillings a week wouldn't be. So Jack said, 10 shillings a week? For you? I said, yes. He said, do you realise, he said, that's £25 a year? And if I give you that, the other lads in ratio have been with me a long time and are bloody sight better musicians than you, are entitled to £1 and £2 some and 1 or 2 or 5. I said, He said, and on the cost, and he worked it out that I was going to cost him £5,000. So he said, so you see, you've got no bloody chance. So I said, well, in that case, then it's only one thing to do. He said, and what's that? I said, well, better leave. He said, oh, yes. He said, you can't bloody leave me. I own your body and soul. Go and read your contract. And he was right. I read it. He did. It had in there when I could go anywhere and everything.
Well, I never.
All for 10 shillings a week. It was marvellous to me afterwards, but I never went and asked again.
I did a big, during the war, at the end of the war, for the News of the World, with everybody, you know, Ivan Novello thing, to go to Germany. Phyllis Robbins, and we were all going to Germany to do with all the thing, the great, you know, champagne on the aeroplane, everything here. We were all wonderful, and we got to.
I there?
And we eventually got to Berlin, and I'd said, oh God, and of course it was so old, and they took us to this place and everything. We were all sitting there talking and various things, and so I said, well, I tell you what, this is my music. There was no pianist, so they found somebody. And amongst the people who they had not thought of having the companies for was Dennis Noble, that fabulous tenor.
Yes.
And we went to I finally got somebody, and I was doing, it's hard to say no when you want to say yes. And I said, look, it's da-da-da-da-da, if you keep doing that. And when I stop, and when you stop, you go da-da-da-da, you see. So,
yes.
And I was doing, you know, with my French frock, and it's hard to say no when you want to say yes, and the boys were loving it all. In the meantime, Dennis Noble was going to sing Figaro.
Yep.
Here, and we were very well supplied. It's the first time I'd ever had piano. And it was so wonderful. And there was no pianist to play for this fabulous tenor. They hadn't thought of taking a pianist with them. So they came down and they said to him, well, I'll tell you what, the Sergeant Major, he plays the piano. He's all right, he'll do. So the Sergeant Major came up, he said, what do you want? What do you want to play? You tell me, I'll play anything. He said, he put the music up in front of him and he said, manuscript. Oh, I can't do that. Yeah. So Dennis Noble said, look, I will give you, it's the Figaro song from thing. It was Figaro here, Figaro there, diddle-da-da, diddle-da-da. And so this bloke sits down and starts on this. And Dennis Noble starts, oh, well, I am a Figaro, I am a there, turn over the pages down the bottom, I am the Figaro, I am the Figaro, up-de-do-de, huddle-de-do, turn over the page, up the top, down the... I was in a
very funny.
This great
tenor, yeah.
It's awful manly and how to get over the page, down the bottom, in the middle, and out of the top. Hop-de-down.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've got a smashing pianist with our Howard, isn't he? Well, and I'll tell you what, all charge your glasses, and I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's sing our greetings to the folks, because it's a special occasion, isn't it?
This is a wonderful.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
All together then, are you ready?
Yes.
Wherever you are, we send our greetings. Wherever you are, we wish you joy. Whoever you are, we send our greetings. A birthday may be for a girl or a boy, an anniversary or gold or silver. Here's a wish for you. May all your years ahead be golden too.
shining on you. And for lonely folk, a wish of mine, I'd like to be your Valentine. And greetings near or far, wherever you are, wherever you are. Our warmest greeting, may your lucky star be shining on you. And in every day, the whole year through, may love and laughter be with you. And greetings near or far, wherever you are. Cheers, everybody. God bless. All the best. Take care of yourself. Good luck. Good luck. Cheers. God bless. Wonderful.
Cheers indeed, and a very happy new year to you, Charlie. And Joan Savage, not forgetting, of course, Harold Rich at the piano. The programme was produced in Birmingham by David Wellesby. And I don't know about Thora Hird being in tears at the drop of a hat, as Charlie was mentioning throughout that programme. Those marvellous theatrical tales from Charlie and Co. have had me in tears of laughter for the last 2 hours. And as to Miss Hird, well, she will no doubt be adding some of her own tales when she joins us on Radio 2 later this evening. Here she is with the invitation now.
Why don't you join me for the penultimate programme of the decade? I'm going to play as many different kinds of music as I can, from country, classical and comedy, to Gilbert and Sullivan and Benny Goodman.
Thora Hird with us tonight from 10:05 till 11 p.m. And to see us safely over the threshold of the new year...